All right, let's go live and then I'll bang the gavel.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. It is afternoon. I'm calling to order the 165th regular meeting of the South Slough Reserve Management Commission. We have determined that we have a quorum, so I will ask each of the members present to identify themselves, and we'll start with Bree in the office since you have some folks with you.
Yeah, we can start with our commissioners. So,
Hello, Maya Watts. I'm the education coordinator at the Oregon Institute of Marine Biology.
and I am Bree Adnock, the reserve manager, and we have two guests here.
Distinguished gentlemen you are.
Thank you. I'm Chuck Lee, and this is my brother, Jerry.
Great, thank you. And I'll pass it back to you for the folks online.
All right, let's see who we got for commissioners. Jessica Quinlan.
Yes, I am here.
And
Doing good. It's been a beautiful day so far.
Oh, you have a beautiful background too.
Oh, thank you. It's one of my favorite paintings. And I can't figure out how to get rid of it. So I've been stuck with it for a while.
Well, that's just fine because it looks beautiful.
No, thank you.
All right, let's see. John Burns.
John Burns is present and accounted for.
All right. Hello, John. Good to see you. Let's see who else. Well, who else is our Ryan Scott? That's one of our folks that works down there.
Yeah, I think you're missing Cinnamon
Oh,
Moffat.
there's Cinnamon on the left-hand side of my screen. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Cinnamon from Hatfield.
Okay, and I think that does it for members. So let's, there's folks on the screen. Let's just go around and recognize you all being present. We'll start, we'll go across this way. Rebecca.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rebecca Muse, Operations Manager at the Reserve.
And Sean.
Hello, I'm Sean Schooler. I'm the research coordinator at the Reserve.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody's different on everyone's screen, so I'm just going with what I've got. Jamie. Jamie.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to figure out my camera. It's using the wrong camera. I'm education coordinator at the South Slough Reserve, and I'll figure out.
Yes, because we need to see that new puppy. Deborah.
Deborah Rudd, Public Involvement Coordinator at the South Slough Reserve.
And Alice.
Alice Yates, Stewardship Coordinator at the South Slough Reserve.
Great. Ed.
Yeah, IT technologist for the South Slough Reserve.
All right, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer Kirkland, GIS Specialist here at South Slough.
My screen keeps moving around because Catherine was over there and now she's way over on the right. So Catherine.
I take the minutes.
And fine minutes you take. So thank you. Allie.
Hi, Ellie Helms, Estuary Monitoring Coordinator.
Awesome. Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie Rellitz. I'm the Seasonal Education Specialist.
Oh, and you are echoing. Jenny.
You're muted, Jen.
Okay,
Bobby?
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. I am the Watershed Monitoring Coordinator. I'm Jenny Schmidt.
Thank you. Ryan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ryan. I'm the restoration technician for the Slough.
Thank you. Sabra.
Oh, shoot. Saber Comet, Coastal Training Program Coordinator at South Slough.
Good afternoon. Chris Wall, our NOAA person.
Yeah, this is Chris Wall with No. I'm a non-voting member of the commission.
And you're not the one leaving us, are you?
Oh, not that I'm aware of. So fill me in if I am.
No, that's my partner.
Bree mentioned that.
No,
we
my colleague Bree, who does work with you guys in more of a day-to-day capacity, is unfortunately moving on to a new job.
Oh, I love that people, find new things to do in their life, but it's also sad when they leave a job.
Oh, I've had very mixed emotions. She's quite good at what she does.
Yeah. All right. Well, glad you're with us today. Christine Moffat, you have a beautiful picture of the beach in the background.
Yeah, but here's my ugly face. So, Friends of South Slough, Christine Moffat.
All right. No, your space is shiny and beautiful. So thank you. Ashton.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, perfect. Hi everyone, I'm Ashton. I'm with AmeriCorps and be working on the Estuary Explorers program.
Oh, great. Yes, I don't think we've met. When did you
No, hello.
come on?
Maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll try to make our meeting exciting for you.
Sure, right on, I'm here for it.
Okay. Adam. Yo, Adam. There you
Hello,
are.
everyone. Yeah, this is Adam DeMarzo, a research assistant at the Reserve.
Okay, and I don't see anyone else on the screen. Does that do it for you down there, Bree?
Jen Kirkland is here.
I already got Jen.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We have a great, exciting agenda. I read through it. Always appreciate reading through and using my little flag tags to get quickly to the things that I need to get to. So the first thing up is a review of the minutes. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review those, and I would take a motion from a voting member to approve the minutes as drafted.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as they are written.
Is there a second?
I will second that. Cinnamon.
Okay, and is there any discussion? We've approved them as drafted, but does anyone have any changes they'd like to make? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 Aye. Oppose? Okay, they're approved. Thank you. Public input. I don't see any member of the public here today because I'm assuming the Lees are here to talk about their issue.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right, and we can actually take that first if you'd like, so the Lees can go about their busy day. So we'll move to the agenda items, and agenda item 1 is volunteer recognition procedures, but we can wait on that and go right to the reserve entrance land trade. And Ms. Yednock, actually Dr. Yednock, can you brief us on that? Because it's become a little more complicated than we thought.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So this agenda item is on page 10 in your handouts. And this is related to the subject of protecting public safety and resolving property encroachments at the South Slough Reserve, as well as maintaining good neighbors, I'll add. The issue at hand today is whether the Management Commission should authorize reserve staff to proceed with due diligence for a potential land trade at the entrance to the South Slough Reserve Visitor Center. The authorities for this are laid out before you on the agenda item. And as a brief summary, I'll share that you all remember we met on June 7th during a special meeting of the South Slough Reserve Management Commission. And during that time, we heard from our neighbors, the Lees, about their request to acquire land across our entrance, across the driveway. At that time, the commission directed reserve staff to explore the feasibility of a land trade. And The request for this potential land trade was the result of discussions with our neighboring landowner who requested permission at that time for vehicular access across reserve property to their property for commercial use. So we also at that time during initial research determined that there had been encroachments on both properties by the reserve and the neighboring landowner. And so a land trade became part of the discussion as a mutually beneficial solution. So where are we now? The Lee family submitted an application to exchange land to the Department of State Lands on September 7th. That application is included in your packet starting on page 12. The application outlines the request for the Lee family to acquire approximately, it's a triangular area of approximately 0.29 acres. This area is comprised of grassy frontage right along Seven Devils Road. And it also includes a paved section of our existing driveway. That map that shows the triangle is on page 14, and that's the blue triangle along Seven Devils Road. Let's see. That area does have a small section of trees and shrub understory, but it's fairly disturbed area. It's right along the road and doesn't have a lot of habitat value. The Lee family is proposing to trade for that area, an area of equal size, approximately 0.29 acres of mature forest habitat adjacent to the reserve's driveway, closer to our visitor center. And that's the yellow triangle on page 14. Okay. I started working with our staff at the Bend office who handle the real property work at the department. They went through consultation with legal counsel, and it was determined at that time that the area for area isn't the way we can operate. We have to actually base it on value. So it has to be equal or greater value that the reserve would be getting for an exchange. So since we last met, I've learned that appraisals will be required for this process. So the next page, page 11, outlines the process that we have before us if the commission approves this. Essentially, we're here today to look for commission to proceed. After that, we would need to consult with Coos County Planning Department because this trade would require lot line adjustments. So we need to know what's all needed for that. We would need to consult with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and that's because the land we would be trading was acquired with funding from NOAA in 2021. Following that, we would be bringing this to the land board for approval, and it's likely that would happen in December if things go well, go as planned on this timeline. Then we would have a public comment period, and really the bulk of next year would be focused on drafting the land exchange agreement and due diligence. The due diligence would involve land appraisals, surveys, an assessment of the subsurface ownership. We did determine in our initial research that we own the surface rights to the property, but not the subsurface. So we'd need to resolve that. We'd also conduct cultural reviews, Oregon biodiversity report, and any other due diligence reports that are needed. We would provide an update next year in July to the commission, and then we would need to go to the land board for final approval to execute the trade. I do want to note that there is a fairly large caveat with this. And that is that the area the reserve is considering to trade encompasses a portion of our existing driveway. So as a result, the trade is dependent on the reserve securing project funding to move the driveway from its current location to another location. This is part of an ongoing project that we are working through right now to design to reconfigure and redesign our entrance to create a welcoming and accessible, safe entrance. We've been working with the Friends of South Slough, and I think you'll hear a brief update from them on this project to develop those designs. And this is a high priority project. I can't stress enough because it's also going to be providing that hardwired internet to our visitor center. So securing the funding is something that we have as a high priority working towards, and we will be pursuing first possible grant opportunity in early 2024. So with that, the recommendation before you is that reserve staff recommend the commission authorize the reserve to proceed with due diligence for the Lee land trade, with the knowledge that the completion of the trade is reliant on approval by the land board and the reserve securing funding to reconfigure the entrance away from its current location. That is your overview, and I'm happy to take any questions. I also have, as I showed earlier, Jerry Lee and Chuck Lee are here if you have questions for them. Or
yeah, let me offer up a chance for Chuck or Jerry to make any further comments. We did hear a great presentation from you before, and the commission was able to ask some pretty good questions about the trade, and I think they ended up feeling comfortable, but there might be more questions today. Do either of you gentlemen have anything you'd like to add before I open it up for questions?
Seems pretty well thought out on Bree's part. So if you have any questions, that would be where I'm at.
Yeah,
okay. I agree.
Okay. And you know, the timeline is a lot longer than we all expected. But unfortunately, all these things take time, and the land board meets every other month. So we actually meet every 2 months. Vicki, get your brain moving. But I see it's on the December agenda. Yes, every other month. So we're having a meeting this coming October 10th, and then our next meeting wouldn't be until December. And it's got a big agenda, but I'm willing to slip this in if we're ready, because I don't think it would take very long. And then the next meeting wouldn't be until February, and that just kind of delays things a bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, do any of the commission members have questions of Bree or the Lees?
Yeah, this is
hi,
John Burns. Yeah, I have a question. So the paved entryway that would be given up in exchange for the new partial, will that be contemplated in the valuation?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, it will be. So we'll be appraising the properties that we would be trading. Yeah. And so that value would be reflected in that.
Thank you.
And I don't think that they're going to be appraising the value of the pavement, because when the whole thing is redone, that pavement will be pulled up or reconfigured or whatever. Actually, I think that pavement would stay in place if we traded that property.
Yes.
Yes, I would prefer it did.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. So, yeah, because
Yeah,
it makes it easier.
Being part of the value of the property, that's
Right.
what we expect.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. Well, good question, John. Anyone else have any questions?
This is Cinnamon. I had a quick question about the timeline we talked about last time. Sorry, Maya. I jumped on top of you. We talked a little bit when we spoke last time with the Lees about some intermittent use before the land trade happened. Could we get an update on where we're at on that? Just because the timeline seems to have gotten much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And which Lee, if you could identify yourself before you speak.
Jerry.
Okay.
I think, we can basically work it however you want to do it on that. We haven't actually put an entrance in. It's just basically the brush is cleared at that point. But you know, as far as waiting until the new entrance is in, we can just wait on that and we'll deal with it just the way it is for now.
We continue our operations just down the road from there, and until you all approve that for us to use, you know, if it takes 2 years, darn, but nevertheless.
And that's Chuck responding.
Yes, this is Chuck.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll just add that we had sort of talked about potentially exploring some interim solutions. And I believe at the last meeting, the Lees basically had the same response, that they were being patient and willing to let this process play out. So we did not explore any of those easements. We decided to use our time to explore the trade itself so that we could be working towards that.
That sounds great. I'm glad everyone's being patient so we can get to a final resolution. Thanks.
May I?
Oh, yeah, we have one more comment back from Chuck.
As it went before, it seemed that no one, and I agree, no one was really willing to allow a semi truck to park across the entrance as long as there was no other way into the sanctuary. So really, you know, we've accepted that. And so when y'all get your new entrance set up, then, you know, then we'll start doing that in our space, what will become our space. So if that answers your questions a little better.
Yes, thank you.
And your business is still going strong?
So far, so good.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that. And that was Jerry responding. So thank you. All right. If there's no other questions, I would need a motion from.
We did. I'm sorry.
There is a question. Maya had one.
Sorry, it was mostly just a curiosity. I'd never heard of subsurface ownership assessment, and I was just curious what is involved with that. Like, can they assess the land appraisal and do a subsurface, or is it a different sort of assessment?
That's a great question. I am learning myself. So we essentially, there are several properties that the reserve has, several parcels that when we acquired them, we acquired the surface, but not the subsurface. And so this is actually a great opportunity for us to look at all of those parcels. And as far as we can tell right now, we're working with the title company. Those subsurface rights are owned by one entity. So we could resolve all of this and then be very much more streamlined in our management and have the ownership surface and subsurface.
And who's the one entity that owns those?
The name has changed a couple of times. I think it's the Oregon Moore Lumber Company. I can provide.
Okay.
I know Moore is in the name, as in Moore. I'm sorry, I don't have that information right in front of me.
Well, it's an interesting concept because most of us don't think about that. When you own a piece of property, you think you own the whole property outright, and yet sometimes you don't. For instance, the state, we own subsurface mineral rights in a lot of our locations, and so we have to do an assessment by Department of Geology and Mineral Industries to determine what the value is of the mineral rights. In Oregon, they tend to be pretty low value. We don't usually have a lot of exciting, expensive minerals in our subsurface. So there's usually not any, there's a de minimis value there. So we'll see about these.
Yeah, and I guess what I'll add too is that I do think it's not unusual that our property ownership is this way. I think there was a fairly, I don't know when, but since 1974, there's been a shift in Department of State lands to prioritize the subsurface ownership on parcels that they're acquiring. So I think this slipped through early on, and so it's a time to resolve that.
Okay, then I would take a motion on the recommendation that's at the bottom of page 11. If someone could make a motion and then a second, and then we'll vote on it.
This is John Burns. I move that we accept the recommendation to move forward with this process.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Maya.
I third that too.
Well, we can have discussion and you can say, yes, I think that's great. So thank you, Jessica.
Oh, and maybe we'll get this done by our gentleman's next birthday, because wasn't it his birthday when he was here last time?
It was.
Yes, so maybe we'll get you on your next birthday.
That'd be a great birthday present.
Yeah, it would.
All right, and that was Jerry. So, okay, thank you. So we will vote on that recommendation, which is to authorize the reserve to proceed with due diligence for the Lee land trade, and the knowledge that completion of the land trade is reliant on approval by the land board, the state land board, and the reserve securing funds to reconfigure the entrance away from its current location. So all those supporting that motion, say aye.
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 Awesome. And any opposed? I see none. That motion is approved, and we will try to get this done with all due dispatch, Mr. Lee and Mr. Lee. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
All right, well, have a great day, and we'll move on to agenda item 1. We'll go backwards, and that's the volunteer recognition procedures. So Dr. Yednock, tell us about that one.
Great, thank you. This one hopefully will be fairly quick.
Thank you.
So the subject around this is recognizing the contribution of volunteers to programs and activities at South Sioux Reserve. Just gonna take 1 second to adjust my camera. Okay, the issue is whether the Management Commission should amend its current volunteer recognition procedures to allow some flexibility. So I do want to note that South Sioux Reserve, and I know the Commission is very grateful for the dedicated volunteers who donate their time and expertise to our programs every year. And we have had regular recognition at Commission meetings since 2005. The Commission has made it a priority to recognize our volunteers. We did this at the last meeting earlier in the year, I believe. So this hopefully is fresh in your minds. And in preparing for that recognition, we found this language in our minutes from previous commission meetings. So in November of 2005, at the 114th regular meeting of the commission passed a formal motion to codify its volunteer recognition procedures as follows. And I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just note it really is prescriptive and identifies when volunteers receive thank you letters, certificates, and plaques displayed at the visitor center, recognizing their contribution. We definitely, we still think the commission should be recognizing volunteers, but we are hoping that you all might consider a little flexibility. So frankly, we are running out of space on our walls for the plaques. And we've also learned that volunteers don't necessarily want to be recognized that way. So we are recommending that the commission continue regular recognition of volunteers and pass a motion to kind of update this language to provide some flexibility in the procedures for recognizing volunteers. And I do have Deborah Rudd on as well, who is our volunteer coordinator. So I don't know, Deb, if you have anything you'd like to add for the commission to consider.
I think the only thing that I'll add is we did do the procedure differently this last time after having not done it for a couple of years due to the 2020 shutdown and all of that. Even though it was only a handful of volunteers, that's the most volunteers we've had attend this. So I think none of them had to dread being embarrassed by being handed a plaque that they didn't know what to do with. So I think the flexibility is working, and they did appreciate being recognized. So I think we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. So with that, I will, I guess, pass it back to Chair Walker. Oh, it looks like you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry, a text came in from work that I had to respond to, sorry. The recommendation is to continue our regular recognition of volunteers and pass a motion to provide flexibility. And I think that's great. And I was reading in our wonderful notebook today, and there you all buy t-shirts for the volunteers when they come to work. Which I think is awesome too, but we need more recognition than a t-shirt. We need to recognize their efforts. So, all right, well, was there a motion made?
I have a quick question. This is Cinnamon. Deborah, are you looking for different language, or are you just looking for broad acceptance of flexibility?
I think broad acceptance of flexibility is probably best because things change over time.
Great.
Okay, all right. Then one of the commission members like to make a recommendation, a motion?
I'd be happy to make a recommendation that the management commission change how they do this to the way they want to do it with a broad recognition. Because you guys do a great job.
We do. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Maya. And any further discussion? I think if you have read through your materials, which I'm sure you have, you will see how many volunteers they have at the South SLU. It is a tremendous number of folks, young and old, who participate. And if I lived on the South Coast, like I used to, I would volunteer, but it's a long drive for me. But it's tremendous. And without the volunteers, they could not accomplish all the work that they do. There just isn't enough people power to do that. A total of 53 volunteers put in 1,141 hours, valued at over $39,000 from March through June, according to Deborah. So that's a lot. So thank you very much. So all those in favor of the motion to allow the staff to proceed with more flexibility in the recognition procedures for volunteers, say aye.
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 All, any opposition? Nope. That is approved. So thank you so much. We will go to number 3, which is really interesting. That was sent separate from your packet. That information was not available at the time your packet went out. So I have my copy here. So Dr. Yednock, do you want to talk to us about what Ramsar is?
Sure, I will do my best. Before I do that, though, I do want to just recognize that the Friends of South SLU are huge partners in recognizing our volunteers. And so I think Deb did put in the chat that those t-shirts you mentioned are provided by FOSS. And we do give volunteers the option not to take a t-shirt because not everybody needs or wants another t-shirt. But we do appreciate the Friends of South SLU supporting the recognition events for our volunteers.
And thank you for pointing that out. And my grandchildren proudly wear their South SLU Estuary t-shirts. They have matching ones, different colors, and they were actually on Instagram when they were visiting the visitor center. My oldest grandson was picking up a telephone and looking very quizzical about what this strange device was. Because many of us don't have telephones like that anymore. So anyway, thank you, Friends of South Slough. They're a tremendous partner to the South Slough Reserve. And like our volunteers, we couldn't get our work done without them. So thank you. All right, Ramsar.
Yes, and this kind of came across our plates a little bit late, like I said, to get this into the commission packet. And given the short time, I had hoped somebody from NOAA could come and present, but the timeline just didn't work. So I will do my best. But essentially, we were provided an opportunity through NOAA to consider designating the South Slough Reserve, or applying to be designated as a Ramsar site, a wetland of international importance. So Ramsar is an intergovernmental treaty that is named after the Iranian city where the meetings took place and where the treaty was ratified. And it provides a framework for the conservation and the wise use of wetlands and their resources. So the National Ocean Research Reserve, which is coordinated by NOAA, is looking at ways to sort of partner and become Ramsar sites. Some reserves have already gotten Ramsar designation, and they're operating as wetlands of international importance. And so this opportunity was passed to us from NOAA. And we did have a coastal management fellow came out and gave us kind of a brief update on what Ramsar is and what it means. And this one pager kind of outlines all that information too. So essentially the designation allows, the prestige of these incredible natural spaces and those of us, the reserve staff and the Department of State Lands that administers to the reserve, to shine through. Designating the reserve as a wetland of international importance would benefit the reserve and our community by communicating the significance of the resources on a national and an international scale. It garners interest from the public because it sort of elevates the importance of wetlands, highlights the value of the reserve system to congressional representatives, and reinforces the need for continuing to fund our programs consistently. And it creates opportunities for cross-border collaboration and information sharing. Our main question, of course, to NOAA was, well, what's the impact? What is this going to cost us? What are we going to be committing to? And really, it's kind of fascinating in that we essentially have already met the criteria for being a Ramsar site. It's just a matter of putting that criteria into an application to explain what we are and what we do, and describe the habitats in our reserve and the species that are protected in our reserve. This, I will note, has no cost for applying, and it does not hold any regulatory power at all. There's no restrictions that are part of this. And actually our management plan as is, and the site profile that we have has all of the information that's really needed for this application. All that is needed beyond the application, if we were to be designated, is to just update and submit an information sheet every 6 years. And really it's everything kind of can just be resubmitted unless something changes in that time period. Part of the application would require a letter of endorsement from all the landowners. So that would be the Department of State Lands. So I do believe we would be bringing this to the land board, where we need to determine if that needs to happen, as well as a letter of endorsement from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And it says any other party that has regulatory interest, but really that is just ODFW for us. So essentially, I guess that's it. I would do my best to answer any questions. Alice Yates is on the call, as is Sean Schooler, who both participated in the meetings with our NOAA fellow who came and described this program. So if I've missed anything, please feel free to add it. Or maybe you can help with questions if there are any.
Just to add that the canals fellow that came was really productive, having him come to the reserve and fill in a lot of the information while we just spouted all of our knowledge at him. So just to recognize the appreciation, I guess, of that. support for this process.
Chris, can you share a little bit? Do you know about the other reserves that have done this?
Unfortunately, this is part of our office's work that I'm not exceptionally familiar with. So I apologize. I wish I could do more. I do know that there is one reserve in California that was designated a number of years ago, down in the Monterey Bay area. There's a number of others that are considering and pursuing it. And I think it is something that our office is looking at trying to support network wide for all the reserves across the country. Because of the exact reason that Bree already shared, that so many of them, by being National Estuarine Research Reserves through NOAA already, pretty much already qualify for this. And I think it can just bring that added attention that the designation status would have. So I think it's something we're looking into nationally, but that's where my knowledge ends. And so apologies, I don't have more.
Okay, great. Jessica Quinlan.
Well, I did some research on this after I got this because I thought, well, what an interesting concept. And there are 41 of these in the United States, and there's a couple thousand around the world. It's pretty interesting. And I couldn't figure out any reason why you wouldn't want to do it. Honestly, it's everything about it that I could find was positive in terms of the commitment to making sure that what you're doing is positive for the environment that you're in. And they're looking at all kinds of wetlands and estuaries and things. And I just thought it was really impressive. I never heard of it before. And I thought, we should try this. I think it's a good idea. There's a lot of information online. It's really honest. It's really great.
I'm so excited you did your homework.
Yeah, there's like 8 or 9 of them in the California area and a whole bunch on the East Coast, and a couple, we would be the first one kind of in the Pacific Northwest up. And it's really pretty cool. Some of these been doing it for a long time. I mean, decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll note to add on to the reserves that have been designated. Elkhorn Slough, I think, is the reserve that Chris Wall was mentioning in California. And I do believe San Francisco Reserve and Tijuana Reserve are also Ramsar sites now.
Yeah.
And this fellow who came out came to us first and then was heading up to Washington to the Padilla Bay Reserve. So it's really, trying to get the West Coast on the map and get that covered. Jacques Cousteau in New Jersey was just designated. So, we have a resource there if we have any questions about the process.
Cool. Any other questions or comments about this? Oh, and I bet there's a motion in here because I read that earlier. Let me get to it.
I didn't actually put a motion in here because all I had was this document that came in late. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like a motion?
I think that would be helpful just to document that the commission, is considering this opportunity, and I would recommend that the commission support this.
Okay. Can I get a commission member? Well,
I would certainly make a motion that we commit to looking into this and seeing if this would be something that would work for us. Totally agree.
All right. So your motion is let's do some due diligence and come back and tell us what we need to do next. We can actually make that motion to be that they go forward and start this process. We should probably do a presentation in front of the land board, I would think, Bree.
Yeah, I do think so, because we do need the endorsement from all landowners. So
yeah, it might be good to start with the land board first, though that's going to be more difficult because we have a meeting coming up October 10th and we are already full. And then December is our next meeting, and that's got to be kept small. So let's go ahead and keep the motion is to continue to pursue this issue and do what we need to do to keep moving it forward. Does that work for you, Bree?
yes,
Okay.
that sounds good. Thank you.
Is there a second on that motion?
A
I can make a
second.
second. Oh, John seconded it. Okay, great. So all of those who are excited about this motion and want to keep moving forward on this really interesting project, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, I didn't ask for any further questions or comments, so if anybody had any, you can do it after the fact. Did anyone have any comments? Sometimes my Robert's Rules of Order escape my brain, but okay, well, this is exciting. I'm really interested to find out more about what the other I think the place I would start, Bree, is with the other SNERRs, other NERRs, and see what it has done for them and how exciting it can be, and if there's any difficulties. And I can start running it by the land board members too as we get closer.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That is item number 3. Item number 4, our lovely invasive 5-spine green crab in Oregon that people have learned a lot about. So Sean, do you want to give us an update? Have we been eating more green crab? Have we seen a reduction in green crabs? More interest in taking care of keeping these things out of our waterways?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief presentation on that today. Can you
Okay.
see my slides?
We do.
Just a single slide there. Okay. So one of the things we've been talking about, first of all, is what are green crabs? So we're going to go through very quickly, go through some of these topics: identification, biology, spread, recruitment, population growth, the effects, and the management options, all in about 15 minutes. So I'll have to do it quickly here. So the first question is, what is a green crab, or a 5-spine crab, we're also calling them? Problem is they aren't always green, and some of our other crabs are green. And so one of the issues that ODFW is worried about is people destroying native crabs like Dungeness that are sort of greenish when they're babies. And so we've been discussing maybe trying to get the word out by calling them 5-spine crabs, or I usually do the 5-spine green crab. So adding the green in there so that you know what it is, because they're not always green. But if you do want to identify them, you can always identify them by the 5 spines on either side of the eyes. So that's why we like to call them the 5-spine crab, because that's much more diagnostic in our area than green crab. And so,
Sean, do they always have 5 spines then?
yes, they do. Yep.
They don't sometimes miss 1 or 2 on either side? They've always got
I've never
5.
seen one in the thousands I've looked at that doesn't have 5 that I've noticed. So,
Okay, and the
yeah.
Dungeness has 10, so that's pretty easy to tell the difference.
Yeah, once you see them and you look at them a little bit, it's easy to tell. But before that, it's kind of hard. So I think that's the education component that we need.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
And that's why we emphasize the 5 spine as being the diagnostic trait. So people don't think that all green crabs are bad, because all crabs that are green are not bad. They have a planktonic life cycle, 4 stages that are floating around in the ocean. And when they start settling in the estuary, they turn into a megalopa stage. And then from there, they look more like crabs, the crabs that we think. How did they get here? Well, they got to the West Coast in San Francisco Bay. They were first found there in 1989. And in Coos Bay, they were first found in 1998. And so we know that they're coming up the coast, and that's how the recruits were getting there. So those larvae go out. Shut my window here. Coast Guard helicopter going by. So the larvae go out into the water, into the ocean, and then they float up on the current. And we have this Davidson current in the winter that sets up, and it brings those larvae along the West Coast, and then they ride the current or the tides into our estuaries. And that's these little larval planktonic form. And so there's a nice demonstration of this here. Let's see if we can get this going. So here's Kate Sherman put this animation together. So if you look, it's 1995, and it shows the green crabs going up the coast for the past 25 years or so. And so they got up there pretty quickly, up into Canada, and now they're sort of filling in all those areas. You can kind of see them. And then now we're coming close to, I think it stops in 2020 or 2020 there. And so that's what we look like now. So They're all up and down the coast. Last year they were found in Alaska as well.
Oh, I was just about ready to ask you, are they in Alaska now? Is the water too cold there?
Nope, no, it's not. And they will do well probably in some of those areas. So.
Wow.
So we do monitoring for this in Coos Bay, and we help assist with monitoring along the coast as well and organize some of the data from others who do monitoring. And so we do adult crabs at 10 sites in Coos Bay every year in the summer months, because that's when they're most active. We count them all, we release all the native crabs, we bring the green crabs back to to measure them in the lab. And then September, earlier this month, in fact, we finished up our green crab sampling with the juveniles. So the ones that come in the winter, they're now large enough to enter our traps. And so we use these smaller crayfish traps to monitor the juveniles that come in. So we're monitoring the adults that are older and then the new recruits using these traps. This is what a Fukui trap looks like. Our bigger ones are collapsible traps, so they're easier to handle. They don't look like the big crab traps that you get Dungeness in because they're much smaller and more lightweight, so we can move them about easier. They're also a lot cheaper. But in that trap, you can see the Dungeness, the larger ones there on the left, and the green crabs are all the other ones that are on the right and then kind of around. So those are the green crabs.
What do you use as bait?
Chuck Seafood gives us tuna offcuts. And so we go out and get 5-gallon buckets of tuna goo and then put them into these bait buckets or the bait canisters.
Well,
Towards
thank you,
tuna.
Chuck Seafood. Wow, that's great. So are all those green crabs just hunkered down because they don't want to be next to the Dungeness? Or
Well,
you just
there's-
moved them?
There's kind of some under the Dungeness there too. So they're
I
hunkered down
see.
because they're in the, they're worried about predators now because the water's all gone. So
Oh. Okay,
we
wow.
measure them in the lab. So we take them back and measure them. And then we euthanize them by freezing, which is the most accepted method along the coast currently, because we can't put them back in, of course. And so if we look at some of these data we have here, so here we have recruits, and so these are the new ones that are coming in. Starting in 1998 to 2 years ago, we have our latest data from then. You'll see year along the bottom and then the catch per 100 traps. So it's kind of the number per trap along the side there. So what we see is that over time, and these are also, you can see these different estuaries. So it includes Coos Bay. This is kind of the first one in the line. And then Yaquina, Netarts, Tillamook, and Willapa are all in there. And you can see that over time, there can be pulses of new recruits. So in 1998, the first pulse was quite a lot of recruits. And then there were several years of low numbers and higher numbers and low numbers. But since 2015, we've been having consistent high numbers of recruits. And the reason for that, those pulses are El Nino and La Nina events. So during El Nino years, there's a faster current, the Davidson current, it moves faster. And so from San Francisco Bay, where most of our recruits were coming from at least, they can move a lot quicker and further up the coast. So the larvae are in that plankton in the ocean for about 2 months. So if you look at the velocity per day, so in El Nino years, it's a high velocity current. It goes about 30 miles a day. So if you multiply that by 60 days in the plankton, it's about 1,800 miles. So they can go all the way up to Canada on an El Nino year. And in La Nina years, I think it's misspelled there, it should, non-El Nino years, they only go about 360 miles because the current is slower. And so they only make it to the border of Oregon and California. And so that's why we see these pulses. And so if we go back to this and we add to the temperature graph, so in El Nino years, that's warmer temperatures, you can see that those points there on the graph, the water surface temperature, or the ocean surface temperature, when it's warmer out, we get more crab recruits because those are the El Nino years. But what's interesting is that
unfortunately, this year is an El Nino year again.
yeah, we're coming back into the El Nino cycle. So we expect that next fall we'll have a lot more recruits again.
So
what's interesting
Sean,
now,
what are they doing in California to try to tamp down on these green crabs? Are they being very aggressive?
in some areas, they're doing, mostly it's research work. I don't think there's anybody truly trying to manage them in California. I think they've kind of given up. In Washington state, though, they're actively monitoring, particularly in the Puget Sound area, because they're trying to keep those numbers down.
Okay.
But what's interesting about this graph is that if you look to the newer, more recent years, you'll see that even with lower temperatures now, we're getting more recruits than we would expect. And so the question is, so what's going on there? So prior to 2017, we think most of our recruits were coming from California, like I was suggesting. But since 2017, in those El Nino years, we think that now we're actually having reproduction locally as well. So it's not just California recruits we're getting anymore. So I think what's happening is that we have these multiple sources. We've got the southern source still, but we also have internal recruitment. Alan Shanks of OMB found some early instar larvae a few years ago in Coos Bay. So we know that they're actually being reproduced in Coos Bay. Some of them probably stay in Coos Bay and then mature to adults. We also, through genetic tests, we know that there's a population up in Canada called the Sook population that's genetically distinct from our other green crabs. And we're seeing that, or else Carolyn Teppold is doing this work at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. She's seeing that genetic signature is now moving down the coast. So it was in Sook, then it's in Maca, now it's in Willapa, and we expect to see that coming down too. So we know that now that our recruits are now from multiple sources, internally from the north and from the south. And we're seeing that in our recruit numbers too. And so we're kind of breaking that El Nino, La Nina cycle. We still will get more recruits from San Francisco Bay during El Nino years. That'll boost up our numbers. We're also getting them from other sources as well.
Sean, can you tell the difference between a larva, Dungeness larva, and a green crab larva?
Yes, you can. Yeah. It takes a specialist though. It's very hard to do. There's actually going to be a workshop up in Padilla Bay because they're very interested in green crabs, and they're holding a larval green crab ID workshop this spring.
Okay, and
So
then
you can
someone
learn to do
asked
it,
in the chat
but
if
it's
there
hard.
were any natural predators for these things, and I don't think there are.
Yeah, well, there are. That's I don't have it in this talk. If it was longer, I probably would. But there are our native crabs, the red rock crabs, and the Dungeness will eat green crabs if they're big enough. Bigger crabs will eat smaller crabs at a certain proportion when they'll see them as food and not as dangerous. And so certainly they do. But the problem is that they are small as they're growing up. They're then prey for green crabs, which I'll talk about later.
Okay.
So if we look at some of our data along the coast that we've been compiling from ourselves and others, we see that almost all the estuaries in Oregon have green crabs, and we can see how many. So this is catch per unit efforts. This is how many you would catch per a trap. And so Coos Bay, you can see, has the most number right now. It's about 6 per trap on average. Yaquina is about 2.5. And so you can see some of them, there's differences, and that varies by year and by site. So if we look more at Coos Bay data, we can sort of understand how that's happening within estuary. And so these are our Coos Bay monitoring sites. We monitor all around, mostly in South Slough, a lot in South Slough, and also some in the Coos estuary. And so we look at over time, we get this for the adults. So we looked at the larvae or the recruits, and now these are the adult numbers. And so we see over the years, the same thing early in the years, in 2002 to 2015 or so, they were kind of waxing and waning. And so the bars here represent the number, again, the catch per unit effort. The numbers above the bars are the number of traps that we use to get that number. So that just shows the amount of trapping effort that went into that number. And the bars, the error bars, are deviations. So that's the difference from the average. So it's our variability in our numbers caught per site. We see over time, again, the same thing with the larva recruits, is that there was waxing and waning early on. And then in 2016 and 17, we have large numbers now that are maintaining themselves. They're not going back to zero, and they're kind of maintaining themselves and going up almost every year. Recently with La Nina, it hasn't been going up as much as it does in El Nino years. But as you pointed out, Vicki, that we're heading into El Nino, and so we expect this to keep climbing then. But what's interesting is these variability numbers too. So it's showing that between sites, there's a lot of variability. So we can look at these individual sites that make up that number here in this slide. So each of these lines is a different site over that period of time, about a 20-year period. And we can see that most of them, they're pretty low numbers. So most of our sites have less than 1 catch per unit effort, pretty low. But there are 3 sites, the Coos History Museum site and the Isthmus Slough, which are along the Coos Bay waterfront, and Jonay, unfortunately, in the South Slough area, are all coming up now. And so they're increasing their numbers. So you can see that and this is important for other estuaries too, is that if you're only sampling one site in an estuary, you may not get a good number of a good account of where the crabs, how many there are there, because you might find a site that's low in numbers or high in numbers. So I think we do enough sampling so we can kind of look at that and see what our variability is, spatial variability. And here we're seeing that there are these focus sites that have high numbers of crabs compared to other ones. Again, if we look at that on our map, I've got them circled there in the red. So Coos History Museum and Isthmus Slough have been high. And then Jonay is a new one coming up. And so those are the kind of sites that we're worried about. So we start talking about green crab effects. They're omnivores. They will eat anything that basically they can, primarily predators. And the thing they love most is bivalves. And so shellfish, clams. I've talked to many people around the area that have clammed for a long time, and they say that numbers are going down, and they think it's green crabs, or some do. So that's anecdotal evidence. Also, of course, other crabs, they'll eat any crab that's small enough, that's smaller than they are, that they can eat. The other unfortunate thing is they'll dig up eelgrass. They eat a little bit of it, but they also dig in it to get at the bivalves, get at the shellfish that are in there. And so that's another unfortunate thing we have to deal with and worry about. About 10 years ago, Ted Groschultz of UC Davis came up with kind of a number of about 10 catch per unit effort as being indicating starting to get those higher impacts. And so again, if we look at our numbers, none of those the average is not that high. But if we look at, again, that variability, like I was talking about earlier, we can see that Jonay, Isthmus, and Coos History are either approaching it or above that number already. So we'll probably have some negative effects going on along the waterfront of Coos Bay on bivalves and crabs and other things, and now in Jonay as it's coming up. So this is an example of also density makes a difference. And so here's a study that looked at the effect of green crab density on eelgrass restoration, something we're very interested in. This is done on the East Coast. They basically they planted eelgrass in pools and then put green crabs in to see what the effect was. And so at 1 crab per meter square, just 1 crab, but there wasn't much effect. But when you have 4, about half of the shoots were destroyed, were chewed up or eaten or removed. And so density makes a big difference in the impacts, of course. The other thing we're worried about is I have circled there a little baby Dungeness crab. It's kind of teal colored in the back, you can kind of see, but then all those green crabs around it. And that's kind of the worrisome thing that we're seeing, is that we have a lot of these Dungeness nursery grounds in our upper estuaries. And now the Dungeness have to go down through the green crabs as they increase their numbers in the mid estuary as they mature. So some examples of that is Hinch Bridge, which is quite high in our South Slough estuary. We get lots of these little, these are all Dungeness, baby Dungeness here. Another site in Sangstack in 2018, we did seines, and we got 210 in one seine. We actually weren't even seining for crabs, we were seining for fish, and they just happened to get in there. So another example of lots of little baby Dungeness in their years when they're producing a lot of crabs. All these crabs then will have to deal with increasing green crab numbers. And Vicki, this one's for you in the on the Umpqua estuary in Reedsport. A record was 276 baby Dungeness crabs in one trap.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, no green crabs in this one, although they are in the estuary at low numbers currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what we're worried about, is that we have these baby Dungeness in these upper estuary regions, and they're coming down through where the highest numbers of green crabs are going to be or are already. And we don't really know what the effect is, but I'm sure a lot of them are getting eaten as they go through that area, and more so as our numbers increase. So we talk about management. Eradication really isn't feasible because they're coming from everywhere. I mean, we can't, even if we could get rid of them all in our estuaries, they would come back again. Management of abundance probably is possible. It's a really only way to reduce the impact. There's a number of different ways to do that. You can do physical trapping like we're doing now. We remove about 1,000 a year, which isn't a lot, but we do remove green crabs from the estuary. There's biological control, which really isn't possible due to effects possibly on other crabs like Dungeness crabs. Chemical control, we're looking at pheromones. That's not really looking very good for pheromones, but we can't really use pesticides, of course, in our estuaries. Also ecological, like we talked about building resistance. So if we could get more red rock crabs, we could reduce the number of green crabs, for example. But something that we can do is do physical trapping. And so the question is why, how do you encourage that? People they can eat them. So there's currently no commercial industry, which would be great if there was, because they would remove them. And you can collect using a recreational shellfish license, 35 a day per person. And so you can go and collect them and eat them. People do. I have talked with people eating them. I've eaten them and they taste good. So it's possible, but they're kind of small. The adult size is only 6 inches. So they definitely aren't as easily eatable as our Dungeness crabs are. There are some beneficial uses, though. We talked about human food, but also in agri-feeds. There was a paper looking at nutritional value for chickens and fish. The shells have this polymer, and this is all shellfish, all crabs do, called chitosan, which you can use for wastewater treatment. Also makes good compost. And our local seacoast compost will take them, but it's not a high value. So it's not like people are going to go and trap them just for compost, probably. So example of some food, there is a cookbook for green crabs. Soft shell crab is probably the best option. And so I've been looking at soft shell, like when they lose their shell, when they molt. And it looks like May is probably a good month to go out and collect them. So this May, I'm going to try that again and collect a bunch of crabs in May and see if I can put them in our little crab hotels here and see if I can see them molt. And if that is true, then we can start to develop a soft shell industry, perhaps. Talk about agri-feeds, and so there's a paper from the East Coast that actually did look at nutritional value of green crabs, and they are good for fish replacement, but also in this they looked at chickens, and so they make a great chicken feed actually. And the problem, as you pointed out, is that El Nino conditions mean more recruits, and so we expect the numbers to go up dramatically, probably starting the adults in 2025. When the adults are really going to go up. So we need to keep monitoring to evaluate that population growth. We've been talking about having a coastal monitoring coordinator with ODFW and see if they could put somebody on that would do all the coordinating all these, and then also do more sampling in the estuaries to see where the hot spots are. We need some more experiments to look at this per capita impact, what the density is, and how we can what numbers we should target to remove green crabs. And also the management, how do we develop a sustained trapping program, one that just doesn't go for a few years and then fall apart, so we need something that's robust. And that's why I think some sort of industrial application would be great, or commercial application. So the next step for us, we're going to continue our research and monitoring. We're working on the Oregon Green Crab Management Plan, and that's Dr. Katia Rivera at PSU is the lead on that. And I'm on that board, as well as ODFW and some Sea Grant folks and others to create a Oregon management plan. There is already a West Coast management plan, so we'll draw on that. Start management in high value areas, like in South Slough. We can target Jonay and do some extra sampling there, maybe to reduce those numbers and see how that works. And also we have a session on green crabs at the State of the Coast in November. And so I'll be giving a talk with this and some more information there. And we can, with a lot of other folk. And so it's a whole session and a number of different people are going to be talking. So with that, again, lots of acknowledgements. It took 20 years of data. It's a lot of people working on this for a long time. And yeah, I'll take any questions.
Hey, Sean, I saw at one point on your slides that the limit was 35 crabs a day. What if that was increased for the green crab only? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that might be a result of this management plan. Last year, Steve Rumrell did work it through. It was 10 last year. Then they increased it to 35. And we talked about having unlimited, but that's where ODFW was saying they're too worried about people just killing green crab. And so they wanted to put a cap on it so that there wouldn't be too much damage to native crabs. And that was their kind of worry. So they didn't want to go that higher, but it may be in our plan to increase that.
Yeah, because they might be not counting the spines and picking up the good crab. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Maya, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. So when you were showing what catch per unit effort abundances kind of were, or what those values were along the coast, and Coos Bay had a higher value than a lot of the other places. What's your impression of how those compare? And are there really strong monitoring programs like your all's up and down the coast, or are they more sporadic or less thorough in the number of sites that they actually hit along at those different areas?
Yeah, none of them are as thorough as we do it. Most of them are only two, maybe three, some only one site. Sylvia Yamada set them up initially for long term, so she would go from Corvallis down to the coast, and so she couldn't handle that many. So a lot of them are based upon that. And so yes, it should be increased in many of those. And then to make sure where they're sampling is actually where the green crab, I guess you'd want to know the variability, but it would be at least you want to know where the hot spots are and sample those, I think. So yeah, we need more work on that. And that's what a monitoring coordinator with ODFW would really help with.
Well, that makes sense.
I want to just add one quick thing, just to commend Sean on this, because we've, sampled pretty intensely in Coos Bay, but last year and maybe even the year before, Sean has really kind of cobbled together some monitoring efforts further north. And so he's kind of serving the role of a monitoring coordinator on the East Coast and collecting and curating all the data and training folks and getting teachers out there even. And so he's really done an incredible job. And the data that he showed is from those efforts. But he can't do it alone. So that's where, this hoping he can get some help with a coordinator along the coast. Because I know he loves green crabs, but I know he has other things he wants to focus on too. So
I'm sure. Well, because if you read in your book, that science team is really doing a tremendous amount of work. Allie, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Sean, what you thought for both your juvenile and your adult population graphs. Right around 2015 for the juveniles and 2016, you see this, really significant increase. You correlated to the El Nino, but what about also the blob? So those marine heat wave conditions that we're continuing to see, that was a big one in 2015, 2016, but now we're seeing, another marine heat wave that's developing. So do you think that's exacerbating that continued trend of increased population in addition to the El Nino conditions?
Yes, I think so. And I think that the higher temperatures are basically, it increases their growth rates and increases the current speeds. And yeah, so I suspect that all the warming. And so we haven't really tied it to climate change yet, but there probably is some climate change issues that are part of this as well. And they'll only exacerbate the problem, and they're not going to make it any better, obviously, in our area. So yeah, the blob might be part of that stream growth as well.
Thanks.
Hey, I see Christine's hand up.
Hi, thanks. I happened to be at the Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Council meeting yesterday, and Alex Manderson, who is the Department of Ag rep, was visiting with all of us about concerns even within Department of Ag now. And I told him that I would get a hold of you and make sure that you brought him into this. Because I think he raised it as a high concern, especially with El Nino appearing again, and he felt like the statewide effort is not well coordinated. So perhaps you might even get help from Department of Ag for that. I know ODF&W is really severely understaffed to handle this, but Department of Ag always has a little more money. So
yeah, that's true. Any way to get somebody else.
Yeah, and I think, he seemed very much out of the loop of how much has been going on. So I would urge you, and I'll follow up with an email, but it just so happened that we were talking about that at the meeting yesterday. So
well, it seems like because Sean mentioned that it makes good chicken feed. So Department of Ag coming into that can help find an industrial way to gather those things and feed them to chickens.
Well, he's their shellfish specialist, but yeah, I mean, you might as well use the power of Ag. So yeah, that I'll follow up again, Sean, but I just wanted to let you know.
Yep, that's good.
Awesome. Thank you. Any more questions of Sean?
I got one more question.
Yes, Jessica.
It's kind of a silly question, but since they're smaller, does a traditional Dungeness crab ring that I throw out, is that going to catch these, or should you have a different crab ring for that?
Yeah, they're usually the Dungeness crab ones they're too big mesh, and so you won't get probably many. People do get green crabs in them, but not if you're trying to catch green crabs. You want something with a smaller mesh and smaller holes on it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayo?
So I was curious, and this is an ignorance question, but so it almost seems like the timeline between when you start seeing more green crabs in your data set and when they started seeing the decline in eelgrass beds, seemed like roughly similar. But was there any evidence when you started seeing decline in eelgrass beds, particularly in the slough, that
No,
had
we don't think
disturbance?
green crab had anything to do with the eelgrass decline. There just weren't enough there, and even now, Volino Island area has very low numbers, so it would have to be a lot higher than that, I think, unless we're just not trapping well. But I think we're doing a pretty good job. So I don't think it was green crabs that were responsible for eelgrass declines. At least not those eelgrass declines. Maybe in the future, but
That was a great question.
Thank you.
Amy. Okay, wow, what a great science lesson today. Really appreciate it, Sean. This is great work. Bree, did you have anything under other you needed to go over?
I had one thing I was gonna just note under other was Bree Turner from NOAA, our dedicated liaison is leaving, and we talked about that earlier. And I just wanted to officially recognize her, even though she's not here, and thank her for her time supporting the reserve. So Chris, hopefully you can pass that message on to her.
Bree, I certainly will. Thank you for saying that.
Is she going to another federal agency or into the private world?
She's going to a state agency position working in Puget Sound.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. At least she's staying in the Northwest.
She's staying in the Northwest. She's staying with estuaries, just just a different site now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bree, what else did you have?
Well, next up is information reports, and I'm going to mix that up a little bit. Alice Yates, you're still here. Dr. Alice Yates has to leave in a little bit, so I wanted to move the stewardship update up first so that she had time to provide that.
All right. So we will hear from Alice, Dr. Alice Yates.
Thanks a lot for that, Bree and Vicky, for moving me up. I appreciate that. So I want to focus my updates on the Wasson Creek Restoration Project, because although it doesn't feel like new news, it is actually new news to the Commission that we received some massive funding for that. So I just wanted to make sure it was recorded here and give you some updates of what's been happening since getting that funding. So we received just over $3.5 million from, pretty exciting, from the National Estuarine Research Reserve System Habitat Protection and Restoration Funds, which were made possible by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And we are locally just calling that bill funding. So if I slip up and say bill funds or something like that, that's what I'm talking about. So that was huge. And that money accompanied some money that we had already received for this large restoration project. We had already received just over $64,000 from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Coastal Program. We are also on the Coos Bay Coho Partnership that received a large amount of money to support coho restoration and work in the Coos estuary, the Coos watershed, sorry. And so they're dedicating around $100,000 of their money to this project. And the Coquel Tribal Community Funds provided around $5,000 previously to get started on some plantings of native shrubs. So we are looking really good in terms of funding this project. And there's a couple of little pieces that we haven't been able to fund, not in terms of restoration, but in terms of public access and restoring a historic shed in the area. So there's still a little bit of money that we're struggling for, and that's because those just didn't fit under the criteria for these grants. So what's happened so far? So I would like to welcome Ryan to the team. So we brought on Ryan as the restoration technician to South Slough, and he has just been absolutely incredible, working hard on WASN project and related topics and helping out. So it's fantastic to have Ryan on. Another thing that has happened is our first little bit of implementation with these funds was to install beaver dam analogs, and I'm happy to answer questions about what that is. But we did this in terms of a workshop in conjunction with Sabre Comet, our coastal training program coordinator. So this was a really exciting workshop. We had around 20 participants from all over Oregon, up to Portland, and then down to California. A lot of people came from far away. We had some DSL team members come in from Salem and Bend. We had artists come and join us. We had natural resource folks. It was a fantastic 3-day workshop, and we got some BDAs installed. In terms of monitoring, Jenny
You know,
Schmidt,
the beavers knew what they were doing.
yeah, they got it right. We're just hoping to get it a little bit right.
Yeah.
The other big thing that we've been doing is finalizing all of our pre-restoration monitoring. So Jenny Schmidt is lead on this, and we also subcontracted some OSU researchers. So just broadly, we've been looking at birds, lamprey, mussels, plants, marble murrelets, groundwater, stream temperatures, soil temperatures, elevations. We've created a drone program and got some great images and maps that Jen Kirkland has been on. So we've just been really busy getting that monitoring in. And then finally, the other component of is outreach and community support. So I have been talking a lot about the WASN project to our public around here, getting a lot of support for it. Our latest one was last night. The Coos Head Co-op helped us with communicating with artists in our community about a Sea Grant funding opportunity, which would enable them to come and work at the South Slough and create incredible artworks and music and poems and all that kind of cool stuff, and try and help translate some of our research and our monitoring into something that gives the community a sense of feeling of what's going on here. So just a quick, like, what's up next? So we are working on our big contracts to get this work done. And then next year, you will see a lot of changes down in the stream and floodplain area. And that's when there's going to be a whole flurry of activity. So I just wanted to kind of introduce you to that idea that there's going to be some big happenings next year. And that's it, unless you have questions.
Alice, I was talking with Kate or Katrina, it might have been Katrina, on our comm staff about possibly doing a documentary as you go through this, and maybe 2 different types of documentaries, one more of a research-oriented one, and one more of just the spectacular involvement of all the parties. So you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So the latest on that is we're thinking about having one that's a sort of high level, feel good. This is an incredible, project. We've got incredible partners working on it that's a little bit more glossy and polished, and it's intended for the public. Keep the scientific jargon to a minimum, and then a series of shorter, less polished, more targeted on restoration techniques and lessons learned from our project that we can share with our restoration partners and other researchers that are interested. And I am, as I said, we're part of the Coos Basin Coho partnership, and they have this large amount of focused investment program funding. FIP, what is it, Bree?
Partnership.
Okay, so they have a large amount of funding as well for helping coho in the area, and part of that funding is for communications, and they're developing websites, and they're also developing documentaries. And so we are partnering with them to try and get some really fantastic footage and great stories out on this.
That's going to be great. I can see this on Oregon Field Guide on OPB or something, but and I really like the idea of doing two types, one, the really exciting feel good one for the non-science person, but then one that scientists can learn from. This is really an incredible opportunity. This is a big gift. And I mean big because it's a huge lift. And how much staff are you going to be able to bring on?
We're just bringing on Ryan to actually the staff here at South SLU, but we do have sub awards with OSU, and then we are also contracting with Coos Watershed Association to do a lot of the work as well, and then contractors. Yeah.
Okay, and Ryan, didn't you come on to South SLU as an intern in the beginning? Or are you brand new to the South SLU?
Sorry. I had interned here in, what was it, 2015, 2016, I believe.
Yeah, got that right.
Yeah, and I was here for a couple of years, and then I wasn't, and now I am back.
And then you went off to college and got educated?
Kinda, something like that.
Oh, that's so cool that you came back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Appreciate it. All right. Any other questions of Alice about this project or anything else Alice is working on? You can read about it in your pamphlet. Okay, well, we know you have to go, Alice. So thank you so much for sharing today, and just so looking forward to getting us out there as a management commission on a tour. And we tried to get it done this year, but we will make it happen next spring or early summer. Okay, all right, thank you. So we go back to administration and facilities. Your restrooms are done.
Yeah, I will pass this to Rebecca for the admin and facilities update.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the majority of what we've had going on admin and facility wise is all included in your packet. I would like to highlight the one task that Vicki just mentioned. Our public restrooms are officially renovated and done. It's actually great to have them in place before, all of our spring and summer programs happened. We're still working through some kinks that we're working with the contractor on, because we've determined that our automatic door openers are not exactly very kid friendly, but we're working through that with the contractor. So we have a year warranty on them, and they're working with us through these things and sending out vendors as needed. So yeah, that's our big thing here. And we're still working through that grant on the exhibits. And I'm sure Jamie, when she talks about education, she'll touch a little bit on that. And then we're also moving forward with getting our main entrances updated with the automatic door openers. We actually had a site visit on Friday with the contractors to kind of narrow down our quotes. So we're working through that as well. I would probably have to say right now, at least facility wise, I'm very thankful for this, because we really only have one PAC award that we're managing right now. I would probably say in the last 3 to 4 years, we've been double teaming that and having multiple going at once. So I'm actually enjoying the fact that we only have one going on right now. But grant season is coming up, and I'm sure we will jump right back in for next year. So that's really all I have. Did anyone have any questions or anything from your packet?
I see that the boundary surveys are continuing to help us define our property better, so we get more support from law enforcement.
Yeah, so our boundary surveys were completed over this last winter. I believe we've had some adjustments and updates to it just to reconfirm some different corners and whatnot during the reporting period. But we finally have those surveys in place for at least around the entrance properties, as well as those privately owned properties along Seven Devils that we tend to have some public access issues with. So we've got those in place. Over the summertime, we've just been so busy, we really haven't went and acted on any of the information that we got, but I'm sure that's something that we will be working through over the winter time. And maybe Bree can add a little bit more on that if she has anything to add.
Yeah, Bree, do you know, how are we doing with funding a law enforcement position with the county?
We are in the final stages of our contract. It's gone back and forth because we had 3 parties. So county, the state police, and DSL have had to review it a couple of times. We just reached the point where we need to provide the maps that we, to highlight the areas to patrol. So I think we're nearing the finish line on that one.
Okay, great. All right, anyone have any questions of Rebecca or her team? Okay, we'll move on to education. Exciting education. What a great year you've all had. So Jamie, tell us about that. Where's that puppy?
I'm in my office, so hopefully just back at home to
All right, so tell us about the education programs this summer. You had a busy summer.
Yeah, so the spring and summer are always our busiest. The numbers in your packet go up through like just the beginning of July, so it doesn't capture all of summer, but it's got the whole school season in there. We had, really busy set of field trips to the reserves and teacher workshops, and then public community events get going in the spring too, around Earth Day and the Mayfly Festival. So it all picks up during the time for the information that you're seeing in the packet. We had, at that time, when we wrote this, I guess, 2 interns. We had 1 intern supported by the Friends of South SLU working with education programs, and 1 high school intern that was with us from Recruit Hippo, which is a nice partnership, and it's a program that pays high school students to get out and work with organizations in the community, and it was nice to be able to do that. During the spring, our seasonal education specialist, Carrie, left, but fortunately we were able to get Sophie help us finish out the season and then support what was a really busy summer. And then she's here through the middle of October. That's a seasonal position. We also, during the spring, we're recruiting for summer. So we had a pretty big group of summer interns, and we were recruiting for our AmeriCorps position. So you met Ashton at the beginning of the meeting, who's been here since the beginning of September. So we had that stuff going on. One education update I wanted to mention was that we had the intern that was working in school programs in the spring helped to create a digital version for program evaluations where participants can just scan a QR code and fill out their evaluation right on site. And that helped us to get a lot more evaluations completed than emailing them after they had already left. So we got some really good feedback, and I'll share some quotes from those things. Yeah, I think those are big updates. And the exhibits, I guess I'll wrap up by saying, or I won't wrap up. I was hoping to show some pictures, but the exhibit project is also continuing. Since Rebecca just mentioned it, I will say briefly, we have a contractor. We got a contract signed for the last phase where we're doing the final designs and they're producing fabricating our exhibits. The company is local-ish. They're from Oregon, so they're in Sheridan. And we're really excited to be working with them. So far, they've been really fantastic. And I think I stuck a photo of something in the folder. Is it possible to share my screen and show some photos while I read some quotes? Yeah, easier.
I think Ed,
can you know how to share your screen? You can.
Okay. I just didn't know. If you all
Yeah, you should be, you should have a share screen button there.
So are you seeing a picture?
There you go. Yeah.
Yes, we're
Guys?
seeing some kids.
All right, great. So I thought instead of pictures, 1,000 words, and then I thought I would just read some quotes that came from program evaluations and summer camp evaluations, and show these at the same time. I think I can multitask. But one quote from a program participant in a kayak program was, "It doesn't get much better than being in a kayak on the water in the South Slough on a beautiful day." But Eric added value with his extensive knowledge of flora, fauna, and history of the slough, and meeting new people were all a bonus. And a bird watching, so I put this picture here, a bird banding attendant said, "Watching the banding of the chicks was incredible. The expertise and care that Joe Metzler showed was truly amazing." And then we had a summer camp parent say she loved everything. Hiking and finding pickleweed to eat was a favorite. Learning about beavers and making beaver tails and masks was another favorite. I had a picture of some kids doing that. They wore those all day, which was incredibly cute. We had a great set of interns. So this photo is intern training. And I got a couple of quotes from Deborah from interns after they left. "I found all projects applicable to future classes and career goals," which is great to hear. That's just another public program picture. "I experienced a healthy working environment with many individuals that were very helpful and friendly." And that's another quote from an intern. And most of these photos, except for this one that I'm about to show of where we removed the tanks, most of these other photos were all taken by a summer intern. Her name was Taylor, and she went out on programs and captured some really great images of people and programs. This is a change we're making to the front exhibit hall. The tank system wasn't working anymore, so we really didn't have the money to update that. So we're changing this habitat here at the front, and I noticed as soon as the tanks were gone, the photo or the painting at the back is just absolutely beautiful. And before we really couldn't see it as well. So I'm already excited. And then there'll be some repairs, obviously, and some changes. And so that's it. I just wanted to share some quotes, and I think those are our updates for now. We're heading into fall, so we're back into school programs and workshop season, and that's the end of community events. Oktoberfish, which is a really popular fun event in Charleston, is our last big community event, and then things start to slow down for the education team a little bit. And I don't think, hopefully I captured it.
You did. Thank you so much, Jamie. Enjoyed the pictures. Anyone have any questions? Okay, it looked like you did a lot of partnering, working with other folks too, which was really great. And your interpretive programs and your teacher workshops are well received.
We have so many great partners. I think we wouldn't be able to be as amazing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Jamie. Any other questions? We will move on to Sabra to talk to us about coastal training programs.
So much of the updates are in the packet, but I wanted to provide an update on the MANA, or market analysis needs assessment. So for a little bit of background, this is an effort that will be, if not the first one, at least the first one in a long time, that's going to be comprehensive to the entire reserve across all sectors. Trying to basically work with an outside partner to get us started on what is going to be a multi-year process fitting within our current 5-year cycle of the management plan, to help us both identify gaps in our current audience, engagement and as well as identify any possible priorities that we could fill that are not already being duplicated by other natural resource management agencies. So it's kind of a making us more efficient, as well as meeting our mission and our goals. So the big update is, I think the last management commission we had reported that we have successfully had the funding from the SSNERR Science Collaborative for the first year of effort in hand. And we are on the cusp of getting a contractor on board. And this first year will mostly be scoping, utilizing a contractor who kind of has done these types of assessments before to kind of help us get all of our ducks in a row, as well as help us identify survey methods and engagement techniques from the social science standpoint to make sure that we are doing as comprehensive an effort as possible. So as that moves forward, Jamie and I are co-leading the process. So as it moves forward, we will make sure to share updates. And of course, once we have those first year products in hand, we'll probably do a longer presentation. Any questions?
Oh, sorry, I was taking notes. Great. And so we'll learn more about this process in the next few months as we go along and do the analysis. That's great. Anyone have any questions? Sabra had a handout in the packet on pages 35 and 36 was the report they had. So you can read more about the exciting things going on in that program. All right, thank you. We will move to science. Sean, there's more to your science team than green crabs. You guys,
Yeah, a lot more.
you all have been so busy. So why don't you share with us? Some of your team members want to share, or is that all going to come from you today?
I think I'll just do a brief highlight of some things I've been sort of gathering some information from them as well. And so to say we want to highlight the interns and what they do for us and what we do for them too. So we had 11 interns this year: Annalise, Aiden, Nicola, Jack, Naya, Devin, Shreyan, Zabra, Amber, Vithika, and Parker, all working on projects from restoration monitoring, water quality, climate change sentinel sites, eDNA, bay pipefish, lamprey, and green crabs. And so, and of course, they also switch projects too. So they all learn bits of everything. And just wanted to highlight that I think that's one of our strong roles that we provide is mentorships, helping young people understand whether or not they want to go into science or restoration or natural resource management. And also the mentors too, all the science staff who have done spend hours and hours on training them too and teaching them, because it's difficult sometimes that they learn techniques and they go away. You know, you have to teach them again next year, but different students. And that's part of our role though, is to provide those experiences
And
to all
then
these
they
people.
come back like Ryan.
That's right. And then they come back, you know, better than ever. So I think that's a role I just wanted to highlight that we don't often talk about a lot, although Jamie was just talking about it for education as well. And so I think we all as a reserve do a lot of that. Mentoring, which is very high quality education, I would say, individual tailored education. That's, I would say, very high quality kind of stuff that we're doing. So I'll leave it at that. I'll take any questions though.
Well, I see Maya has one.
It wasn't really a question so much as a comment that we really appreciate the mentoring of the South SLU science staff in particular. Both Sean and Allie have been great mentors now for 5 or 6 years worth of REU students that they have mentored. And it's very intensive, as Sean said. And so we really appreciate that they're willing to take on that mentorship role for so many of our interns over the years. It's been fantastic.
It really makes a difference to have an intern, and it makes a difference to have a mentor who really cares about their success. Jessica.
I would just like to make a comment that I was very impressed with the staff listed under the Science and Stewardship Program update as I was reading through everything on this, and the number of committees and work groups and all of the work they're doing. It is very impressive for, 5 or 6 people to 7 now to be doing all of that. I'm very impressed, and it's very thorough and interesting and educational, and you guys are doing a great job. I think you should get kudos. We give kudos to the volunteers, but we should definitely give kudos to you guys.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
agree. It goes
Yeah.
on for pages and it's in small type.
I know, and it's pretty impressive. I'm reading through all these committees and work groups, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. I mean, you guys are really smart. It's great. We're really fortunate to have you. Really fortunate.
And I couldn't agree more. So thank you very much. And if you haven't had a chance to read about all the things they're doing in the science program, make sure that you get to look through that packet because it's very exciting work. And even a non-science person such as myself can understand it and appreciate it. So thank you. Okay, we already heard from Alice on stewardship, so that leaves us with Friends of South Slough. Am I correct?
Yeah, the last thing in your book too.
Well, except scheduling the next meeting, and we've lost some people, so now
Yeah,
it's hard. But
we would appreciate that too.
yeah,
It's not July, so anyway, thanks for the opportunity. We've submitted a report on page 57, and we just as a segue, we help fund some of these interns, so that is a really good process. It's a good collaboration, and that's one of our big priorities of the Friends of South Slough is to encourage the spreading of knowledge and networks. So the only thing that I want to update you on, which is sort of a preamble to where we are interested in when the next meeting of your commission is going to be scheduled, because we have been very involved with this redesign project. And we're pretty excited about the opportunity to really change the entrance design and make it very compatible, safer, and accessible. And it's been quite a rewarding experience working with a group of consultants that are local, which is always nice. Civil West Engineering Services has the main contract, but they have a sub with HGE Architects, and both of those are Coos Bay firms. We continue to have meetings, and what we want to do is have them present this design to the Management Commission, hopefully in your early winter meeting. Bree and I have talked about this, trying to get it scheduled. So it's really important for us so that we can schedule our contractors to present this. And as Rebecca clearly made in her report, this is a design with a cost estimate so that it could be moved into one of the NOAA opportunities. And so we're trying to set this up so that it will jumpstart any kind of redesign to incorporate these properties that we helped purchase, and that really will make a difference in the entrance, and also allow for this property adjustment to occur. So it all fits into the puzzle. So we've been giving this a lot of our volunteer time for sure. So the reports in there, we didn't include any maps because the final maps are still being worked on. We've had very successful meetings, and look forward to being able to present that to the commission at your next meeting. So if there's any questions, I can take them. Otherwise, you can just read our report or ask for follow-up. Bree's got copies of everything, and so does Rebecca. Rebecca is doing all the due diligence with all the parties that we have to have. The big thing is, once you get an actual DSL line or whatever we call the line, a true wired internet, life will be a whole lot nicer at the reserve too. So.
Well, and that's the other reason to hurry this along, because I read that in the education report that it was really difficult to have education programs sometimes this year because the internet is so bad. And I know it's been difficult for staff who come to work and expect to have a working internet, and they're doing a training and it falls apart. So I see, Christine, in your report, you say the project will be completed in November. So we can do a early December meeting. Can we, Bree?
Yeah, that was the wrapping up the meeting was to try to schedule. So should we switch into the scheduling, or are you?
Well, if we can't get a majority of folks, we can always do a special meeting just on this, but because I want to hurry things along, the process is, when you need to be ready to jump in and apply for an award from NOAA. And so the sooner we get this decided, the sooner you can be in line to do that.
Yeah, the request for proposals for the PAC grant comes out in November. So we know it's coming, so we kind of start preparing and working up ideas and project proposals. It's due in February, so we have time, but I'd still like to get the meeting scheduled in November or December so that we can.
Yeah, either before Thanksgiving or after. I really dislike that time between Thanksgiving and Christmas because it's so hard to get people scheduled. And I've got a big land board meeting December 12th. So I'm going to be really busy the first week or so in December. It'd be nice to get it done before Thanksgiving, but that's dependent on whether your engineering team will have that back to you. Have you decided on a plan and they're just tidying it up and having you come back for one more look?
We have a plan that's really close. But what we have to do is be comfortable with that plan, and then we can get these cost estimates and working carefully to have those in different bins so that you can say if the call for proposals is X, this is what we want to do. This is the basics. Then we have value added that we can add to it. So it's a comprehensive plan, and that's the beauty of it, so that it takes into account where you want to be. And we're calling it at least preparing for the next 50 years. We figure it's a 20 to 25 year cycle, but this is a major and will really enhance everything about the entrance and the way the reserve functions just as an institution because of getting this internet taken care of, making sure we have power available for electric vehicles, lots and lots of things that are really important to the future. So we really have an eye on the future here. So the earlier, the better that we can get a commission meeting so that you folks can evaluate that. And then we're comfortable that Rebecca and Bree can put this together. That's where we want to be. And we told our consultants that we want those designs by the early part of November. And I think we have like a 7th or something like that for a deadline. And knowing that, things can get extended and so forth, but that's our target, so that we are really, then we can have another small contract with them to help kind of fit in some of these things to work with Rebecca on the final details of it. But this is really important that we have you folks approve what's going on. So that's
then, we'll schedule the meeting around when we think we're going to get that back from the engineer. because I mean, we'd go to all that trouble. Bree will tell you, it's sometimes hard to schedule. Because people have very differing schedules.
I was gonna take the opportunity though, if we could schedule this meeting in November, the commission typically meets March, July, and November.
Mhm.
And if we can narrow in on a recurring time for those 3 months, that would be really helpful for planning purposes for everyone.
Yeah.
And later in the months is better. And I realize that the Thanksgiving holiday is always problematic, but I was going to just throw out and ask for folks if that last week in November, or basically the 4th Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, the fourth week of those months are options.
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar because if people go away for Thanksgiving, it's usually before that.
We also, I will say, we have the annual meeting, the NERS annual meeting, the week before Thanksgiving. So all staff, the staff attending that, a large number of folks are going to be gone for that. And there's a big push to get things ready for those meetings. So
okay,
4th week works. That would be fabulous. If
So
not,
you're saying the 28th, is that what you're saying, Bree?
the 28th is a Tuesday.
Tuesdays are the only days I can never make it to a meeting because I'm a clinical educator at SWAC in the nursing program, and that's the one day I work.
Oh, that's right. And then is
Yeah.
there
that's
somebody that
great to
can't
know.
make
So we can
Thursdays?
roll that out of any
So
poll.
no Tuesdays for me, but I'm pretty flexible on everything else.
So I would say Thursday or even Friday.
Yeah.
Thursday is the one day I can't meet every
Oh, that's
week.
right. I knew. Okay, so it'd be Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Right. I'm good on any of those.
Okay, I wouldn't do Monday because that's right after the Thanksgiving weekend and some people will be coming home. So it'd be the 29th, Wednesday, or Friday, the 1st.
Yeah, either of those are good for me.
Friday the 1st is better for me, but I could do either or.
Okay.
Okay. Do mornings or afternoons matter?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Afternoon on the
Afternoon.
Friday.
Great. And this is also, I would love, to think about these as in-person meetings moving forward too. So Friday afternoons is a good time. Folks can get here in the morning and that would be fabulous. Okay. I'm feeling encouraged by this right now. So I will reach out to your fellow
Writing it down.
It
Please.
might be hard to get our consultants for Friday afternoon, but I would push you to maybe get that Wednesday if you were thinking of that one, but.
Okay, well, I'll work with the remaining commissioners on those 2 days and see if we can narrow
Yeah,
in.
because they really want to set this in stone too for their presentations too. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, Wednesday or Friday, Wednesday, the 29th or Friday, the 1st.
Yeah.
So put a hold on your calendars, ladies. I think you're the only ones left. Everyone else disappeared. So.
Well, then we should get to rule.
I agree. So I'll put a hold on my calendar, which my calendar is always more complicated than I want it to be. And let's see, let me take a look at my calendar while I'm at it. So Wednesday, the 29th. Oh my goodness, there's nothing there. And the 1st, there's just one meeting that I always have and it's no big deal. I can change it. So, okay.
Great. Thank you.
All
But
right, well, let's get
Bree-
that nailed down. And then Chris Wall, I don't know if you're available on either of those.
Well, I was going to say, I'm a non-voting member, so I defer to the others. That particular week, I'm on work travel already. There's a chance I'd be back on a Friday, but I haven't made all my plans yet. But given the particular topic, it's probably one I'd have to refrain from saying much on anyway. So for this particular meeting, please do not plan around me, but just a heads up that I might not.
Yeah.
Most likely. On the 29th, I certainly wouldn't be, and the 1st is very hit or miss, unfortunately. But
Okay,
I think,
great.
I think that's okay for me for this time.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we will try to plan something. I'd like it to be virtual. My father lives in Charleston and I haven't seen him in a while, so it'd be nice.
You mean in person? You said virtual, I think.
Oh, I said, I meant in person, but
Okay,
you know,
I gotcha.
you got me. Okay, yeah, I had to turn my doctor's appointment into a virtual appointment tomorrow morning because my daughter-in-law turned up with COVID and they've eaten dinner here the last 2 nights. So I feel fine, but I don't know if I'm going to get COVID. So fortunately, doctors still do visits virtually. So, and this is just a checkup. But I get the virtual and the in-person all mixed up anymore. It's like virtual has become almost the way we do things. So it was a pleasure to see all of you today virtually. I look forward to seeing you again. Did we have anything for the good of the order before I take a motion to adjourn?
Just thank you guys for all your hard work. I'm real impressed. I really have enjoyed this.
Aren't you glad you're on this commission? This is so much
Actually,
fun.
it is. I learned a lot about my own backyard too, which is really awesome.
That's great. All right. Well, I will take a motion to adjourn and then a second, and it's not debatable. So as soon as I get those motions, we'll be done.
All right. I'll have a great weekend, everyone. I second it.
A motion seconded. Who made the motion?
I thought you did.
Oh, I did. I'll make the motion and you seconded it, Jessica. Anyone object to that? It's not debatable, so we're out of here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
The 165th regular meeting comes to a close.
Yes. Nice.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye, everyone.